Shut down.
Day with you, so it's actually a great day. I've been working 5 plus big weekend. Well, many of you have actually. Very nice. Safety first. All right, darling. So, welcome to the bus. Welcome to your tour in Barcelona on this beautiful Tuesday morning. My name is MIRO. I'm going to be your tour guide for this half-day tour to Montserrat. Yeah, MIRO, correct. But I'm not important. The most important person is our driver, Carol. So how about a big round of applause for this beautiful young lady here. She's going to be navigating the love bus up and down the mountains as if it was that easy. All right? All right, darling. So, it's what? Almost 9 o'clock a.m. on a Tuesday morning. You're in Barcelona on vacation. So I'm going to make you a deal. I'm going to try to summarize the past 2,000 years of history in this city in the next 27 minutes and 30 seconds. And then we're going to have our national sport, and then when we arrive to the mountain we'll do the same, and we'll take it from there. What do you say? Yeah? Can we do that? Yeah? Yes. It never ceases to amaze me, the enthusiasm, because you guys are stuck on this bus with me for an hour, so you really have no choice, right? What do you know about Barcelona? Anybody know anything about our city? Do you know what language we speak, or who founded the city, or... No? Okay, let's start from the very beginning, okay? We're a city that has influence from Hebrews and Greeks, but we were established by the Romans a little bit over 2,000 years ago by Julius Caesar's nephew, Julius Octavius Augustus, the first emperor in Roman history. Very well, after Egypt fell. Germany, Egypt, and northern Spain, where you are now. The Romans are far removed, but we do still speak the Latin language, and we do still have the Mediterranean diet. How many of you have been enjoying your stay here with the food that we eat here, right? The tapas and the paellas. It's amazing, the food that we eat, right? That's right, folks. So we have the Latin language and the Mediterranean diets. You know, folks, when the Romans arrived, they actually established a city right there in the center of the Gothic in Plaza St. George. Okay, but they didn't last very long because at that time there was way too much espionage, there was too much backstabbing, there was a lot of stuff going on. So today we're far removed from the Roman times. Yes? But I am going to show you a few things because we're not coming back this way for visual aids so you can understand. So if I jump from one epoch to another, please try to keep up, okay? You just departed from the very first train station in the Spanish Peninsula's entire history. Our first train was in Cuba when Cuba was still Spain. Yeah? Yes. But that was the first one in the Spanish Peninsula. We are the first city ever industrialized in the history of Spain. Yeah? That means that this beachfront that you see right now is built in the 1992 Olympics. You have to remember, Charles Barkley, Larry Bird, and of course Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson were here for 1992. But when you look over to your left, you can see a chimney there. You have to imagine a time where all these were just big factories. And we built this beachfront on top of the delta of the Beso River, and you have the Llobregat on the right, but all this was factories. And in 1992, we actually took it all down, and we rebuilt the city the way you see it today. Did you know that the Sagrada Familia this year became the tallest church on the planet? We snatched the title from Urn Church in Cologne, Germany, and these are neo-Gothic establishments. They're with skyscrapers that were starting to be made during the Industrial Revolution, which started in London, Marshtown, York, and Manchester. Very well. But when you look over there, you see these two big towers. These two big towers right here were actually the tallest buildings in the city from 1992 all the way to this year. Now, there's 3 things you need to remember about Hercules. 2 I'm going to tell you now, and 1 I'm going to tell you when we're coming back. Okay? All right. Number 1. Hercules split a mountain between Africa and Europe to create the Mediterranean Sea, and that's why we build skyscrapers next to seasides in humanity. He also sent people on a ship on a mission, and it crashed during a rainstorm, and he found it right here on the shores of the Barceloneta. So in Greek mythology, Hercules is the founder of the city, and in Roman mythology, obviously it was humans, you know, that founded the city. Very well. You can see how posh it is. Imagine a time, folks, where we live with our backs towards the sea because we didn't want to face the cruel reality of what was going on here with the factories. The people that were forced to live here were living in horrible conditions, and that's why the chimneys are so tall. They were developing all kinds of respiratory issues, but at least the farmers that you're going to be engaging with today came from the farmlands of Montserrat, and they enjoyed the first payroll and the first, you know, structure and work in Spanish history, but we didn't have human rights until the 20th century. So these people were literally living and dying on the streets. If you've ever heard someone say work yourself to death, that is exactly what they were doing, guys. They were working 18-hour shifts, 7 days a week, and your only day off was Christmas Eve, which were, and the information I'm giving you now, of course, we're going to tie it on later to what we need to know, okay? All right, darling. So whatever happened to the Romans? Anyone know? Who likes Game of Thrones? Yeah? So we have Game of Thrones tours in Girona, 1 hour away from Barcelona. A lot of the, for example, the scene where they're shaming the Queen with the Walk of Shame, that was done in Spain. Any movie you've ever watched with Charles Bronson or Clint Eastwood back in the day, spaghetti westerns, were shot in Almeria, the south of Spain. And any movies you've seen on Mars, like for example The Martian with Matt Damon, that was shot in the Canary Islands. But Catalonia, where you are now, we are one of the 17 autonomous states within Spain. And we make up one of the 5 languages in the ecosystem of Spain. Remember that Spanish ties us all together. But if you're in Valencia, it's Valenciano. In Galicia, it's Gallego. Right? In the Basque regions, Kirulai or Vasco. And here, we speak Catalan. The worst thing you could ever do to a Catalan person is say, you know, your dialect is quite interesting. No, it's a language. You know what else we hate? When I was in Spain, the prosciutto and the prosecco were above average than when I was in Italy. We hate that. We have jamon and we have cava. We have our own identities here. But we are an extension of the Roman Empire, of course. Very well. So, darlings, the Romans were stabbing, killing, espionage, everything you can imagine, right? And the reason why I ask you about Game of Thrones is because everybody knows the Vikings. Everybody knows the Vikings. But whoever really talks about the Visigoths from Germania that predated the Vikings in Dublin, they were speaking Latin. How do you say goodbye in Spanish? Adios. And in Catalan? Adeo. And in ancient Germanian? Ados. Everybody had their versions of Latin. And they were Christian faith, okay? No longer is it the solstice of winter. Now they're worshiping the birth of Jesus. Very well. So by the time that the Romans dropped their military campaigns there, they sent here people to maraud the place and take back the Holy Lands that were rightfully theirs. But when you arrive and there's no one here, it creates a Game of Thrones. It creates a power vacuum. And in the next 200 years, we would crown 37 Visigoth kings. Literally, we were, crowning them overnight. A guy was, enjoying a meal while you decapitated his rival who was captured after battle, but his brother poisoned his mead, and then he's dead, and then his brother's on the throne, and that was how it was, right? And what that means, folks, is that they never saw what was coming for them next. Who was the next invading force? Anybody here from the United States? Yeah? You'd be amazed to learn that there's amazing crutches in our history. The Moors, the Muslims, guys, they crossed what is now an English territory called Gibraltar, all right, our border with Africa, and the only place in the world where Spanglish is fully accepted as a language, okay? In the year 711, I can't even write this stuff myself, 711, the Moors cross, and they find the barbarians here. And they bring soap and algebra and universities and saffron and other spices that we now use in paella, for example. And they take over Portugal and Spain in 15 short years. And today, we remember it as the longest war in all of human history. The next 782 years would go by fighting, right, against the Moors. Why? Because a very, very important general in France was able to stop them. Their plan was to take all over Europe. But when they made it to the where you're going today, Montserrat, they ran into Charles Martel. That's French for Charles the Hammer. Not as popular as his nephew, Charlemagne, the general. He switched up the military style. The Moors didn't know how to engage it. They lost, and they ended up settling in the south of Spain, what we call Andalusia. Rambla, Raval, Ramallah, these are all Arabic influenced words. But the thing is that the further you go north in Spain, the more Germanic it remains. And the further you go south, the more Arabic it becomes. Because the Arabs spent 800 years in the south, but only 84 in this part of the peninsula. So those are the influences here. And the south of Spain is the most influential on an international level. You want to go through a small list? You've heard of bullfighting? Tapas, sangria, right? Picasso, Antonio Banderas, Chupa Chups, the lollipop. You've heard also of that one song, La Macarena, Baila tu Cuerpo, yeah? all of that is from the south of Spain, guys. The most influential part of our peninsula, okay? All right, great. Now, right now we're in a tunnel that is built where the aqueducts used to be for the city, okay? Because the Moors also told us how to do water management. In just a moment, on the left side, you're gonna see an area for yachts. How many of you have been to Park Well since you've been visiting? You know Park Well, right? It's one of the most important of the 7 UNESCO World Heritage Sites by Anthony Gaudi in the city, right? And it's a failed housing project, an English concept that probably Gaudi's biggest mistake throughout all of his projects in his career. But we're going to talk a lot about Casa Batlló, Casa Mila, and all these things, right? So anyways, folks, if you went to Park Well, 2 years ago, we held a meridian race because this area was built for up to 7 million people, but in the Olympics we got 2 million, okay? But that means that now we have a Congress city. We have the mobile conference, the agricultural conference. We can host many events. We have the lodging, the food, the transport, everything you need to hold world events, expositions, right? No worries, miss. So, on your left side in a moment, you're going to see this area with small boats. Whatever is left of the Roman port is where the small boats are here on your left. This is where Louis Vuitton hosted the America's Cup Experience, where New Zealand won it, yeah, or the Emirates. And they did a fashion show at Park Well. Underneath, where you have the columns in white, they did a fashion show there. Over on the left side of this, you have yachts, where you can find a Hungarian billionaire who made himself a yacht after Luke Skywalker's Falcon 1, because that's what happens when you're a Star Wars nerd and a Hungarian billionaire, right? Also, folks, that white building back there is the 2nd largest aquarium in all of Europe. And we have the Chocolate Museum, because this port is the first one ever to see cacao in European history, thanks to Columbus. So, some argue that the chocolate cake that we serve inside of that building is the best one on the planet. Very well. So you should take a chocolate tour here in Barcelona. Great, folks. So, what happened to the Moors? Well, after so much fighting, guys, the Black Plague helped us, you know, take their numbers down. And then there was an epic woman in Spanish history. Her name was Elizabeth I. And she had a puppet king named Ferdinand. He did anything she wanted because all he wanted was vice, and what she wanted was conquest, religion, and royalty. So what did she do? She did 3 things. She funded Columbus's travels. Do you know why they named him Colombo? Because that's what you name orphans. A lot of people were named Colombo. We don't even know where he's from. We think he's Spanish, Portuguese, right? She also expelled the last Moor stronghold in 1492, same year Columbus found the Americas, very well. And she also started the Holy Inquisition, the same lady, in the same 12 months. Epic woman in our history, and very dark character for the rest of the planet. So this mountain on your right is your first mountain today, darlings. This one is called Montjuic, the Jewish mountain. Remember, the Jewish people are entrepreneurs. They're not part of the church's structure per se. So they're allowed to do business, but they have ghettos in the city. In Barcelona, it's called San Ramón del Cal. Yeah? At a certain hour, you have to report to your ghetto, and you bury your dead, and you have your necropolis, what Greeks call the necropolis, the top of your city, and it was here. But during the 1492 Inquisition, we eradicated them, and now in a moment you're going to see a cemetery that's now Catholic Christian, but it started off as Hebrew. And so, it's still called the Jewish mountain today, but it's far removed from its origins. This is where you would have caught Formula 1 racing in the 70s. We get a lot of people coming in this time of year to watch F1, but now it's outside the city. This is where the biggest diva in Catalan history, a lady by the name of Montserrat, kicked off the 1992 Summer Olympic Games with the song Barcelona, recorded in 1986 by probably the best African artist ever to have existed, Mr. Freddie Mercury from Queen, right? So, great mountain, a lot of epic history, and we can even see how much rock we picked from the quarries. The mountain used to run all the way here. Look how much we picked to make any building you've seen in the city. 16th century, the first facade of Sagrada Familia, which was 1882. All the rock came from here up until modern day, where we're starting to bring, you know, marble and other materials from around the Europe and the world, whether it be India, Argentina, whatever it be, right? And you can see the cemetery on your right, folks. This cemetery holds 250,000 souls. They're buried in a mausoleum style. I can see a Masonic grave where you see that pyramid. Those are Masons buried there. Also, the tree that dominates is the cypress tree. today we're going to talk a lot about this flora because it's very important. But your first fact about this tree is that it's used in vineyards and it's used in cemeteries because it has vertical roots. So it's great for burials and great for vineyards. Also, the mausoleums are the people that built and funded Barcelona, because when you were Roman, you were buried alongside the road but closest to the door, depending on your importance in society during your human experience. So we still follow a lot of Roman, style and a lot of Roman traditions here. Now, if you keep looking right, you should be able to see an antenna. Let's see if we can see the antenna. It's a pretty clear day.
Yeah.
Alright, darlings. On your right hand side, can you see that antenna over there? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, there's even a Jesus the Redeemer on top of the church on the right of it. The church on the right is called the Sacred Heart, yeah? If you're looking for a church with great views and then you can go to a theme park after it, Sacred Heart. We have a Jesus the Redeemer, more like Lisbon and less like Rio de Janeiro, but it's, they have one in Paris as well. This is a church maybe in Paris. Anyways, those two landmarks we'll be able to use from Montserrat when we're standing 64 kilometers away from Barcelona at 780 meters to understand the typography of the geography of Barcelona. Okay? Alright guys, so the Moors were expelled in 1492. We discovered the Americas, the Bahamas, right? And you might be thinking, well, Miro, this sounds like Spain's on a roll. Spain, yes. Catalonia, no. Because the Black Plague killed 50% of our working bodies. And then you have to consider, folks, what we now call Istanbul was once Constantinople. Today, it's Marseille and Barcelona. Do you know the original name of the city? Barcino. Where have you heard that before? You've heard it in the movie Gladiator, where he plays the Spaniard, and he's from here. Because this is a retirement city for gladiators, for soldiers, or the Ibiza for emperors. So you would go Barcino to Constantinople. Today you go Barcelona, Marseille. Even though we've always been the second largest, we've always been the most important on Mediterranean trading routes, right? But all of a sudden, the Portuguese who brought tea to Europe, not the English, huh? The English saw on the boxes TEA and they started calling it tea, right? Yeah, but it was the Portuguese. And do you know why? Because they had cannons on their ships 100 years before anyone else did. It was almost impossible to engage them militarily in the sea. So what did Columbus do? He convinced the king and queen to fund him to fly off the flat earth, but to get to the West Indies. And when he came back, we started taking those routes to exploit the new world, right? And that means that Barcelona is left out of the picture and spirals out of control. And the reason why we're going to start again with the Industrial Revolution is because in Barcelona, we didn't win a modern war at all in our history. The next few centuries, we effectively lost 1,000 wars and battles. Our Arc of Triumph is an art piece, guys. We don't have any victories, and our national anthem is celebrating our biggest resistance because we don't have any victories. We're the best business people, but we're the worst fighters in Spain. Okay? But now we have the 19th century and these buildings called skyscrapers come into the game, and now you know the rest. So let's jump directly into the arts and craft movement. Arts and crafts is 1800. Sepia, everything is rock. Even if it have flowers and design, everything is rock. And at the tail end of that, you have people like Salvador Dali, Pablo Picasso, and of course the magnificent Antoni Gaudi, born in that century. And the Art Nouveau movement starts. And then they start building things with color and flair, okay? And all of a sudden we break ground in 1882 on Antoni Gaudi's masterpiece, La Sagrada Familia. How many of you guys have been there already?
Yeah.
Only two? Okay. Did you guys save your tickets? I hope you did, because we're going to ask for your passport and your ticket to Sagrada Familia. If not, you can't leave this country. We need to get it done, okay? So you have to go back to a time where Barcelona was the mud paradise. And it's incredible to think that we would have built an entire neighborhood around the only building that's on a different plot of land. It was supposed to be for horse racing, and then they bought it and they made a church instead because they needed that odd design. As a matter of fact, this is the design of Montserrat, the mountain that you're visiting now, very well, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. So we break grounds in 1882, but in 1883, the guy who was the original architect, Francisco de Paula, can't come to an agreement on this structure, and he throws his toys and he leaves the project. And he goes, I know a guy 5 years out of college, his name is Antoni Gaudí, I'm sure he'll be a great fit. And the rest is history, folks. We just inaugurated the tallest church on the planet. And that would launch us into the 20th century with a progressive republic that would give women their first right to vote in the history of Spain, that would allow people to paint and speak and love each other however they want, right? But the problem is, what happened in the 20th century? Everything went wrong. We had 2 world wars, right? But why did we remain neutral? Because Spain was already busy with its own civil war between 1936 and 1939. 10 years after the death of Antoni Gaudí on June 10th, 1926, civil war breaks out in 1936. Why? Because the cardinals in the church were upset that they didn't have the same power that they did politically, because now we are Republicans and we're progressive, and we call it a flu, and even though it came on an American GI, it got tagged the Spanish flu. Today, when you drink wines in Europe, you're drinking American varieties because the phylloxera, a disease, came here, wiped out vineyards, and today we have to use grapes that have resistance to it, which are American varieties. But there are some laboratories in Catalonia that deal with local autochthonous grapes like Mandó and Picapor. So if you want some good suggestions for what type of wines you should be hunting down here in Catalonia, I can definitely suggest some grapes that you will only drink here that have DOs, denomination of origin, but there are not many. We have this progressive republic, okay? So, we start the war and we become a third world country by 1938. And that's why you had dictators. You know who they were, right? There was Benito Mussolini and there was Adolf Hitler, okay? And they ran the 20th century. So what happens is that they made friends with a fascist dictator by the name of Francisco Franco. And Franco enlisted the help of them. We didn't know yet. And he makes his own attack, just like the Moors, because he was in Tenerife. Tenerife is a territory in Africa that's still Spain, okay? It's an island. So he pushes up, and in 1938, he enlists the help of the Luftwaffe, and they load up their bombs on Mussolini's fascist Air Force planes, and they bomb Barcelona because they had air superiority in 1938. Guys, all of the places that you visit today, you can actually go back and look at horrible photography of it being used for battles, not for tourism, yeah? And in 1938, we can't compete with that, so we surrender. And overnight, women are stripped of their rights. Imagine, you can't even get a driver's license or a passport without the signed permission of a male figure. If you don't like to be Christian, if you don't like to speak Spanish because no other language is allowed, well, we have a version of the Gestapo. If your neighbors are fascist sympathizers, they will turn you in and they can arrest you, torture, and kill you without explaining anything to anyone. 40 years would go by, and today we're taught in school it is the longest fascist dictator in all of European history. A guy was left in power for 40 years to torture and kill his own people. But you folks are on vacation. And I don't just want to talk about sad things. And even when you're a vicious dictator, you have to admit that you have the ability to at least do one good thing for humanity. And you know what that was? Died. He died. Now, dark comedy is a risky business. Anybody here from Canada? Canadians, very well. So in 1977, there was a collaboration between one of my favorite actors ever, Chevy Chase, on Saturday Night Live. What you're seeing now is a photo of Chevy Chase on Saturday Night Live saying, in other news, the dictator of Spain, Francisco Franco, is still dead. And Spain is still democratic, and we would like you to go there and help them rebuild their country, and here we are today. Actually, it was the unofficial slogan for the 1992 Olympics as well. Francisco Franco's still dead, right? But in 1975, when he died, there was a huge party here. And guess who was here? Mr. George Lucas. And the story has it that Mr. Lucas was inspired by Gaudi's designs to make the helmets for Stormtroopers and Darth Vader, which the first Star Wars movie was also 1977. We'll talk more about that and a few other things up at Montserrat. So folks, huge party, the only time Caba's ever been sold out for 2 weeks. And then we joined the European Union in 1986, and in 1992 we host the Summer Olympic Games, but they were very special. Now you know because the Dream Team was here, but also because we were the first comprehensive HD broadcast, which is a hell of a long way, because in 1936 Hitler's Germany hosted the first televised Olympic event in human history. We were the first ones to have a website which will show you how technological Barcelona has always been. Yeah? And also, folks, the stadiums that you see today are from the 20s. But because we went to war, Franco's friends hosted the games in the 30s. So we refurbished existing venues and arenas, and the stadium you see today, the only new piece is the torch. And then we invited countries like Korea and Lithuania to compete as their own country for the first time since fascism. In 1936, a Korean man won a bunch of gold in track for Japan. He was forced to compete as Japanese. Man, you can say so many things about the Olympics of Barcelona, right? But what it changed for us, guys, is it gave us the city we have today. Not just the beach, also Terminal 2. Also the metro system that we have today, and a few other things, right? And we welcomed 2 million tourists when we only had 500,000 up until that point. Last year, we reached over 20 million right here in Barcelona. And this year, with Gaudi's 100th year anniversary, the visit from the Pope, the inauguration of the Sagrada Familia, and remember last year, Pope Francis was supposed to come here, but unfortunately he passed away. You were visiting a monastery that turned 1,000 years old last year. The site is from 1025, so they just got done banking in their millennial year last year. It's a very big moment for Spain and for Catalonia in particular within the peninsula. So we're very happy to see you here, and we hope that you're well compensated with the weather and everything you're going to see on the mountain today, because you had the interest of asking for more than just our beautiful city. Very well. Now, does anybody know the national sport of Spain by chance? The national sport? Sorry? Bullfighting. That's a good guess, sir, but no. Football. That's religion. It's a battle between siesta and pickpocketing, okay? As you can see here, sir, we have a stained glass window with the Barcelona Football Club logo on it. Football is our religion here, okay? And today we're going to practice the siesta. Now we have some folks that are originally from the Philippines who know what siesta means. For those of you who don't, it means a micro nap. But it can't be more than 20 minutes, because if not, you're sleeping, and that's cheating, okay? So, take the next 20 minutes, folks, to rest your eyes and get some energy, right? And when we start getting into the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Montserrat, I'll be there to wake you up and give you more information about religion, nature, and logistics. Alright? Sounds good? Okay. Is the temperature okay for you folks? Yeah? Alright. So me and Carol remain available for you, anything you need. If you're still awake, very soon, you're going to start to see the mountain there in the backdrop as we get there. It's still another 35 minutes before we reach the mountain, okay? Alright. Thank you so much.
Okay.